Hello YouTube, my name is Mr. Donut, this is Books, and welcome to Mr. Donut's Books. So my goal with this channel right now is to share some of my favorite books with people, along with my thoughts and opinions on them. In doing so, I'm hoping that I can maybe get some people interested in some of the books that I really like, as well as be entertaining. It's my first video, so we'll see how I go about doing that. Now, for my first book, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was considering doing the Grecian first books that I have up there, because they are currently my favorite series. But I decided against it now. I feel like a lot of people in BookTube and on YouTube in general have talked about the Grishaverse books, and with the new Shadow and Bone show, that's honestly the best advertising for the books that I can think of right now. Maybe in the future, if people are interested in what I have to say, I'll look over them at that point, but who knows, we'll see. Instead, I decided to start with a series that I've been meaning to reread for a while now. It's called the Red Rising series, first book. It is originally a trilogy that has a sequel series as well. I read it originally back in like 2016, and I absolutely fell in love with them when I first read them. Some of my favorite books for a really, really long time. The first series, original trilogy, consists of, Red Rising, its sequel, Golden Sun, and the finale, Morning Star, all by Pierce Brown, obviously. There is also a sequel series that's come out. I'm planning on, my first few videos are going to be talking about Red Rising, and the second and the third book. I'm not planning on covering the sequel trilogy yet, because as of the time of this writing, there's only 2 books out, and the third book doesn't have a release date announced on Pierce Brown's website. So maybe in the future, when that comes out, I'll read through the sequel trilogy, and we'll go over that. But who knows? I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, since it's been about 5 years since I read the books originally, I decided to reread them for these videos. Now, before I get into this book, I do want to give some trigger warnings. In this book, and the whole series in general, there are pretty graphic violence scenes. Not too bad, but there are pretty extreme violence, as well as themes of sexual assaults. Now, if you are sensitive to those sort of things, I would be very cautious going into there, because it may trigger. I will be discussing aspects of those things in this review. I will give warnings before I get into them, as well as I will give time codes so everybody can, you can skip through it if that's not something you want to hear about. Want to be upfront about that. Now, let's start off with a kind of spoiler-light description of the book. I want to give kind of like an intro summary, and then after that I'm going to get a little bit more spoiler-heavy, and then when I get into the characters, I will just be fully discussing spoilers, mostly because I feel like the characters are the crux of this book, and that's where most of my opinions are in regards to the characters. This book is about a boy named Darrow who lives in a society where humanity has expanded into space, as well as developed a very stringent caste system based on colors, and I'll get into a little bit more of that later. Darrow is a member of the bottom tier of the system, what is known as a Red Rising, and works as a miner on Mars. There, his people struggle to mine what is known as helium-3, something that is desperately needed to terraform planets. Their lives are hard, but they are doing so to save the human race from dying out on the overcrowded and polluted Earth. As the story begins, Darrow's wife, Io, is taken from him, and he learns the harsh truth of the world. Mankind has already terraformed not just Mars, but many planets and moons, built upon the broken backs of the enslaved Reds, like Darrow and his wife and his family. Filled with rage, he joins a rebellion group known as the Sons of Ares. and is turned into something that the ruling class, known as the Golds, won't be able to see coming. He's going to infiltrate their society to destroy them. And that's about all I could say without getting a bit more into spoilers. So if that summary sounds interesting to you and you want to read the books, I would highly recommend doing so before continuing this video. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to still try to stay a little bit spoiler light until I get to the character section, but the rest of this summary will have a little bit more spoilers in it. Darrow is, through a process called a carving, turned into a gold himself and trained physically and mentally to be able to play the part. He gets accepted into a very prestigious and secretive school known as the Institute, where the best and the brightest of the gold children learn and compete to be able to achieve higher status within their caste. There, a gold can become what's known as a peerless scard. Those that stand atop the food chain, even amongst the golds. Doing well there will let Darrow be able to ascend higher within golden society, so he can topple it from the inside. Once in the Institute, the comparisons to Hunger Games really come out. I know when I first was recommended this book, I was told it was Hunger Games in space, because I really liked Hunger Games. And even on the back of the book, it says, a reminiscent of the Hunger Games and Game of Thrones from Kirkus Reviews. And it is, to a degree, on a lot of that. The students are sorted into 12 houses based on the Roman pantheon. And after making it through the passage, which I'll get a little bit more into when I get into the character stuff, compete to conquer each other in medieval warfare. They're all put into castles, they have swords, horses, crops, that whole shebang. So they have their castles and everything, and they're supposed to compete with each other to conquer the other houses and be the ruling house. Darrow is placed in House Mars, which is also known as the Rage House, fitting enough. He makes allies and enemies, struggles to become the leader of his house and fight with the other houses. Only one house can win by conquering all of the other houses, with the leader of that house being the winner of the entire game itself. Okay, that is about as much as I can say without getting way more into spoilers. So again, if this book sounds like something you are interested in, and would like to read without knowing what all happens in it, I would highly recommend going and reading it now before I get into it. If you're not interested in getting these spoilers, but you still want to know like kind of my thoughts and opinions on the whole thing, like my critiques and stuff like that, please skip to this time code, which will be the end of all the character stuff, and I'm going to go over my follow-up and my final thoughts and everything. Start off with Darrow, our main character. Since the book is told from his point of view, a lot of this section is going to be a more in-depth rundown of the book's story and his growth alongside it. From the get-go, it's pretty clear that Darrow has a lot of pride within his color, though he can step on that pride if it means appeasing the colors above him. At 16, he's what's known as a helldiver. The most difficult and most important member of the mining team. Mentioned before, they're mining the helium-3, something like that. He thinks he's the best one that's ever lived. He's pretty clear about that. He disses on all of the older helldivers, and just like, yeah, they're good, but I'm better. Pretty arrogant. He's even confident enough to think that he's going to single-handedly, basically, win his clan what's known as the Laurel, which is essentially a thing, like a simple thing, that is granted to the clan that does the most mining in there, and it gets them like more supplies, more luxuries, medicine, it generally makes their lives better. Now, this is something that when he mentions it, a lot of the older members of his clan, particularly his uncle Neril, who's a very important character, scoff at or even try to, like, tell him to, like, yeah, maybe don't hope for that. Might not work out for you. Uh, Even his wife, Io, doesn't seem really excited when he tells her he won it for them before the Laurel Tide, I think is what it's called, where they announce who the winner is. She's just like, maybe. But as it turns out, the older members and his wife were right to doubt and scoff and tell him not to vote for it. Not because he couldn't get enough for them to win on paper, but because it doesn't really matter. The Laurel goes to the same clan it has always gone to, the Gammas. It doesn't matter which clan clearly deserves it. The higher-ups have chosen who the winner will be, and subsequently, the enemy of all the other clans. It's a lot easier for people to focus on hating their neighbors for having it a lot better than them than focus their anger towards the people that are orchestrating the issues. It's like, if you're saying your neighbor doing a lot better than you, you're going to have a more immediate anger towards them than towards the people that gave them the things that are making them do better. Now, while Darrow's pretty disappointed, and understands what's going on. Like, he pretty quickly gets, like, okay, this is what's happening. He still accepts his place in life, much to his wife's frustration. Like, Io does not like that. She takes him to a garden that's been made for the higher colors, where, like, grass and animals and bugs and flowers, stuff that they don't typically get to see. She tells him that, like, she wants him to see that their people are refused all these benefits despite being the ones who bleed, sweat, die, do everything to make this stuff happen. This garden was built because of the helium that the Reds mine, but they are denied the spoils of it. Like, and she wants him to be angry about it. She wants him to get mad because she believes he can lead people. That, like, if he steps up and fights, people will follow him. Darrow doesn't really care about rebellion. He doesn't really want to fight. He's content with what he has. He's content to be a Helldiver. He's content to be with his family, even in their cramped space. And he's content to spend his life with the woman he loves, his wife. That's all he wants in life, and she tells him he needs to live for more. Now, they leave the garden, and when they're leaving, they get caught by the police force, which are the Greys, also known as Tin Pots. I'll go into it a little more later. I'm going to say that a lot in this, but I really love how things get named in this, but that's the whole thing. Yeah, the Tin Pots take them to the stage, and there's even, like, a camera crew and everything, and to, like, film them getting punished. And the reason we find out that there's a camera crew and they're making such a big thing out of doing this punishment is because the arch-governor of Mars, actually the leader of Mars, is on the planet at the colony right now. And he's, like, come to check on things and has decided to make example out of Darrow. Again, Darrow is a Helldiver, the most important member of the mining crew, and one that we've seen, like, he gets a lot of deference from, like, a lot of the younger people in the clans, as well as, like, a lot of older people will, like, take pride and, like, look up to him in a way, even if they're like, you're kind of a kid, but, like, he's very clearly a person to respect within the clan. So their plan is they're going to do a very severe punishment of whipping these two, with the main point being to film Darrow being punished, as an example. They even put him into his Helldiver suit before dragging him onto the stage, just so they could rip it off of him for the display. Sorry, folks. Darrow, as I mentioned before, is pretty content, and he's willing to step on or swallow his pride when it comes to appeasing the higher colors, because he's content with his lot in life. So he lets them strip him, he goes to his knees, he takes the 40 whips to his back. It's like painful and bloody, but he takes it. He's willing to do so. Io, though. Io fights. She is shoved down and whipped until she starts singing. Now, the song she sings, as we're told that, like, it gets mentioned a little bit earlier, there is one song and one dance that are absolutely forbidden for the Reds to perform. The dance is, I believe it's the reaping dance, and Darrow's father actually did it in protest and died doing so. And now Io starts singing the forbidden song. It gets referred to at some point in the book as like the first song, and it talks about like reaping and veils, and very much like a companion piece to the dance, or at least in my opinion it is. She sings the song knowing that they're being filmed and knowing it means her death. It is her act of rebellion, because the arch-governor's there, they are being filmed. She is making herself into a martyr. Darrow can do nothing but accept the choice she has made. He watches her be hanged, and due to the lower gravity on Mars, the only way for someone when they're being hung to die, like quickly, is someone has to pull on their feet hard enough to snap their neck. And that's typically something that they let the loved ones do as an act of mercy. And Darrow goes up and he does this. He grabs his wife's feet and he pulls, snapping her neck as his final act of love for his wife before she dies. That night, he sneaks out of his house where he meets with his uncle, Neril, who I mentioned before. They drink together from Neril's flask, and Neril tells him not to be stupid, but he knows that Darrow's gonna do what Darrow's gonna do. Darrow's stubborn. There's no way to talk him out of something once he's decided. And Darrow does go to where Io's body is still hanging, and he cuts her down. He takes her back to the garden where they spent their last night together, and there he digs a grave for her and buries her, something that is also forbidden. You're not allowed to be buried. That's something that's reserved for higher colors, not reds. Basically, he's doing this as using an act of love as an excuse to commit suicide. He told his Io that he lived for her. She's gone. He doesn't want to live anymore. So he's hung, and his uncle pulls his feet, but obviously he doesn't die. We wouldn't have a book if he died here. Turns out the drink he was having with Neril was a drug that temporarily stops his heart and his breathing, and essentially lets him fake his death. He's picked up by the Sons of Ares, who he's taken to a man named Mickey, who is a Violet, which is the creative class. And Mickey is also what's known as a carver, somebody who does surgical modifications to people, creatures, stuff like that, to change them. He even has a whole collection of girls that he's given wings to turn them into angels. And he's the one who physically turns Darrow into a gold, after Darrow has proven that he's incredibly smart, and will be able to possibly keep up with the golds intellectually. Now, after he's been physically turned into a gold, he's brought to a character named Matteo, who is a pink, which they are essentially the pleasure cast. They are designed to be physical companions and at the service of the higher class, most typically the golds. But we see violets and stuff can have them too. And Matteo is the one who is a pink, and is the one who trains Darrow on how to act like a gold, how to carry himself and how to speak. Teaches him how to read, and does all of this stuff to improve his, like, chances to be able to, like, not just look the part, but act the part. And, like, as he goes through this, like, Darrow, like, doesn't really like Mickey that much, but, like, does get a lot of fondness for Matteo, which, so do I. Matteo's great. I wish he was in more of the books so I could do a whole section on him, but, like, he's only really in this one little section, but trust me, he's great. After passing all of the tests to get into the Institute, which is, like, a written test, which you got a near-perfect score on, an interview, and, like, physical examination, he goes in and is the first pick for House Mars, as well as the 10th pick overall out of all of, like, 1,000 children. I don't think it was, yeah, out of, like, 1,000 children. I say children, they're, like, 17, which are still kids, but, yeah. Doing so well really doesn't help with his pride, which I mentioned before is, like, kind of his fatal flaw, and we'll see a lot of that in the book. He has a nice dinner with his fellow housemates, jokes around with some of them, you know, plays his part. He builds a sort of rapport with some of them, most notably the Bellana twins, Cassius and Julian, probably mispronounced her name, and a boy named Priam, who is a non-pick, who was put into Mars as, like, a request from his mom, who owns, like, 2 of Mars's moons. Yeah, that's very important, Priam. And Darrow, you know, builds his rapport. He has a couple of slip-ups, like, he kind of insults Cassius at one point, but is able to kind of recover from it, and, like, he gets along really well with Julian, which does a lot to win over Cassius, because Cassius loves his brother. And everything seems to be going okay. He's starting off that he might have some allies. Then comes the passage. The way the passage works is every student is dragged out of their bed in the middle of the night, stripped of all of their clothing, brutally beaten, and then thrown into a room with one other student. Only one of them can leave the room and take their place in the house, and only one of them can do so alive. Darrow is unfortunately put up against Julian, and even though it's very hard, because he thinks Julian is honestly a really good kid, he thinks he's kind and sweet despite the fact that he's a gold, but Darrow does what he has to do. He kills Julian with his bare hands. It's the first time he's ever taken a life, and it's hard, but it's what he has to do, even if it's going to haunt him for the rest of the book. Things really get into the swing of after that. They're told about the game, how to win, all of that. They must conquer and enslave the other houses, and they have 10 months to do so. House Mars quickly divides itself into 4 tribes. One is led by Darrow and Cassius together. Cassius doesn't know that Darrow is the one who killed Julian. One is led by a beast of a boy named Titus. One is led by a very cunning girl named Antonia. And one is led by, and consisting of only one person, Severo, an ugly, rude little boy. All of them have their own section in the character perspective, so I'll go over their tribes and how they handle them a little bit more when I get to their specific sections. Darrow and Cassius' tribe primarily consists of them, a boy named Roke, a girl named Leia, a girl named Quinn, and... Okay, they're referred to as low dregs, so, like, the low scores, like, the bottom of the people, the low score members of their house, and the low dregs have names, but they're almost exclusively referred to by their nicknames, so that's what I'm going to refer to them as. Yeah, they are Clown, Screwface, Weed, Pebble, and Thistle. More on all of them later. After defeating Titus by allying with Antonia and Severo, and letting Cassius kill him, as Cassius is under the belief that Titus is the one who killed Julian, something Darrow's kind of content to let him believe. Darrow is set to become the leader of his house. Severo takes the Lodregs and turns them into a squad that are known as the Howlers. They ally with House Diana to take down House Minerva, though end up capturing Diana after Diana tries to betray them, something that Darrow kind of saw coming and had plans against. And it's around this point that Darrow is warned about someone dangerous in the south, somebody that's known as the Jackal, and also finds out that that's the Arch-Governor's son, Arch-Governor Augustus. And he also learns that the proctors, the adults who are overseeing the test at the Institute, have been pressured into helping the Jackal win. The Arch-Governor has bribed, threatened, etc. to give his son a leg up. Do you guys remember Darrow's major flaws? Pride and arrogance? Well, they have only grown in his victories, and because of that, he falls for literally the same trap twice in a row. It's stupid, but yeah. He's awoken in the middle of the night and lured away alone by being told that Roque is in trouble and needs help. The first time, it's Antonia who is trying to seize control, but he picks up on the fact that it's a trap before it gets sprung and manages to escape, though at the cost of Leah's life. The second time he falls for this trap, it's actually Cassius who has discovered that Darrow was the one who killed Julian, thanks to the proctors slipping him a video recording of it. He doesn't escape that one, but instead takes a sword to the belly. After that, he is luckily saved by the leader of House Minerva, a girl who he has taken to calling Mustang, due to her skills on a horse, and who Darrow let escape when they were attacking House Minerva. Instead of capturing her, he let her get away. Because of that, she saves him, they partner up and slowly start building an independent army of escaped slaves, freeing them and working together. They make new slaves under Mustang because she still has her house thing, it's a flag, it's a standard, that's what it is. She has the house standard, which you use to make slaves. And so they make new slaves under her, and then free them once they have proven themselves and worked with Darrow and everything. And it's, even though they are technically bound to listen to Mustang, it's very clear and everybody agrees this is Darrow's army. Darrow even begins to be known by the nickname the Reaper, because early in the fight, he fought with a grain scythe, which is curved and stuff like that, and it's become kind of his symbol. And as they're going through all of this, they actually find Severo and the Howlers, again, who join them, still very loyal to Darrow. And it's during this section with the independent army that we see most of Darrow's growth for this book. He's still very proud, but he's a lot more cautious and makes it a point to listen to what other people have to say. Where before he was very quick to people would give him some advice and he'd just be like, yeah, but I know better. I know what I'm doing. He makes plans with his lieutenants, is as honest with them as possible, and he really grows to care for a lot of them as friends. We saw hints of it before, but in this section of the book where Darrow really starts to see the gold as people, not the monsters or gods that they always were to him before. These are kids, just like him. Kids that love their families, that love their friends, that just want to survive and want to do what's right by themselves. Now, there's a lot of them that are bad. There's a lot of villains that he has to fight, but ultimately he's able to see that these are kids, just like him. Just because they didn't suffer like he did when he was growing up doesn't make them any less human. Now, despite the Proctors trying to sabotage them on multiple instances, and even trying to kill Darrow a few times, one time by, like, throwing a genetically modified bear at him, which was pretty cool. And that's actually how Severo gets called in, is because Severo comes in because he saves Darrow after the bear tries to kill him. Yeah, despite everything the Proctors are doing, they succeed in defeating some of the houses. His army grows, and, like, the loyalty grows. He's becoming, like, apparently he's whispered in the other houses that, like, the Reaper's coming. He even manages to capture the Jackal at one point, which I'll get a little bit more into everything that goes on there in the Jackal section of this. And when the Proctors mess that up, letting the Jackal escape, he takes the fight to them. He literally, like, takes his army to, like, this, like, mountain thing, which is, like, Mount Olympus, essentially. I think they even refer to it as Mount Olympus. But he takes the fight, and he defeats the Proctors. And then goes and defeats the Jackal, and wins the game. Like, he is the best on there, without a doubt. Now, Darrow's final test of the book comes from an offer from the Arch-Governor himself. The man that killed his wife, that pulled the strings, that killed and hurt so many of his friends at the Institute, asked Darrow to swear loyalty to him and to join his house, one of the most powerful families in the galaxy. And this is one of the things, like I said, where we see a lot of Darrow's growth, because Darrow at the beginning of the book would have just driven, like, stabbed the Arch-Governor in the neck, or tried to, just threw everything away for an act of revenge. But this is Darrow after the Institute. This is after he's grown and gotten better perspective on things. He's smarter, he's calmer, he's capable of seeing the big picture, something that he could not do at the beginning of the book. And so he goes to his knees and he makes his vow. With the Arch-Governor's help, he shall rise, and he shall rain destruction down upon him. Overall, I think Darrow has a very, very good arc. He never really loses the pride he has, but it does get tempered. He's a lot less arrogant, more ready to accept that to succeed, he needs other people that can do what he can't. Where the beginning of the book, he's the Helldiver, he's the most important person in the world, the rest of the mining crew would be lost without him and stuff like that. Now he's like, okay, like, I need other people. Like, I can't stand on my own. He's not a one-man army. He couldn't have won without his friends. And I personally really like the narrative of him coming to see the Golds as people, even if it might not mesh well with Eo's dream of the Reds rising to the top. It's more complicated than just good people, bad people. And, like, he even acknowledges that he does not know how this new view of the Golds will affect Eo's dream. But he does know that, like, he cares about people in the Gold cast now. And yeah, that's his growth. And I think it's a really good arc. I think he's a very solid main character. Even rereading through the book and knowing what happens, I was still very invested in his journey and how he changed. And I still found it very satisfying. And even knowing what's going to happen in the next books, I feel like he ends this book at a very good point, and a very interesting point to make you want to know what happens next to him, as well as the others. Now's the part where I was really looking forward to, because now we get to talk about Severo. Severo is, without a doubt, the best character in the book. He is best boy. I love him so much. He's small, and he's ugly for a gold. He's rude, and he's gross. He's constantly, like, just making nasty jokes, and, like, blowing his nose. And people are, like, he's gross little, like, yeah. But I love him. He's so awesome. He's the best. I cannot state how much, I, like, adore him. His nickname in the books is even Goblin, which he absolutely deserves. He's a little gremlin child, and I love him so much. Okay, enough gushing. Let's actually talk about him. Severo out the gate is a wild card. He's the final pick for House Mars, and it's pretty clear that nobody really wanted him in the house. Darrow even says at one point that Severo was picked with the only expectation that he would be an easy kill in the passage for a higher rank that they wanted to go like a higher score to make it in. They essentially just like easy mode. And we even find out later on in the book that this very much was the case, because the person he was matched with was Priam. You guys remember Priam? The guy whose mom owns a couple of moons? Yeah, Severo killed him. Pretty effectively. And he's also the only member of House Mars who knows how to make a fire, who knows how to hunt, and basically how to survive. He even kills a wolf and wears its fur as a cloak, which is where, like, the term howlers comes from when he becomes squad leader. Because they all, like, wear wolf cloaks and howl. And it's also why he's has his own tribe, because nobody wants to work with him at first. Severo and Darrow bond pretty quickly once they become allies, when they first become allies. Darrow likes him because Severo is very blunt, and he doesn't really try to play the political games that the other kids do. And Severo likes Darrow because Darrow actually acknowledges Severo's skills and worth. Severo's opinions are important and taken seriously, something that we kind of see hasn't really happened a lot for Severo. Darrow at one point even wants to tell Severo that he's a red, believing that in doing so, Severo would respect him more, knowing that Darrow had struggled and fought to get where he's at, just as Severo has. He ultimately doesn't end up telling Severo out of fear that they'll be overheard, instead of out of a fear that Severo would turn him in. It's more fear of other people finding out. But it says a lot about how much he trusts Severo. And Severo even loses an eye at one point, trying to avenge Darrow after Darrow was stabbed by Cassius, because Cassius tells Severo that it was the jackal that did it. And Severo goes out to try to find the jackal and kill him, and loses an eye in the process. And it's after that that he actually starts running around the woods with the howlers, and he becomes there's a rumor, a legend that's spread around the Institute of a one-eyed demon in the forest, and of course it's Severo, our goblin child. The howlers are vitally important to Darrow's success, both in House Mars and in his independent army, the Reaper's army, giving Severo something he's never really had before: pride. Despite the way Severo acts, he's actually very, very shy when it comes to people actually seeing him, because he's so used to being overlooked. He's gross and rude, but it's kind of a defense mechanism, because he knows that people look down at him and judge him, which he's very, very bitter about. And that's why whenever someone actually gives him sincere, positive attention, he gets very flustered and tries to shove it off. but it clearly means a lot to him. And Severo is a character where once his loyalty is earned, it is unshakable. He is ride or die for Darrow, and Darrow could not have made it through without Severo. He just very much could not do it. Time for Cassius. Cassius is a very proud and arrogant boy, very similar to Darrow, and likewise is very good at heart. He makes me think that this is what Darrow might have been if he had been born of gold. In a lot of ways, the boys are mirrors of each other. They're both overconfident to the point of sometimes arrogance, prone to being controlled by their rage, but motivated ultimately by love and family at their core. Cassius loves his family, particularly his twin brother Julian, and it's hard not to feel for him when he loses him. I think he makes a pretty good foil to Darrow, probably the best one out of, like, the three that are in this book. Cassius proves to be a very good ally to Darrow at the beginning, and the book does a pretty good job of establishing that he and Darrow love each other like brothers once the game really gets started. They both have a tendency to act without fully thinking things through at the beginning, something that Cassius doesn't really grow out of for most of his time at the Institute. He even challenges Titus alone, for example, because he thinks his honor and upbringing will guarantee him a win in a proper fight. And remember, he thinks Titus is the one who killed Julian. But Titus doesn't really fight fair, so Cassius just ends up beaten and quite literally pissed on. Like, a group of people, like Titus's tribe, gathers around him and pees on him while he's down to ultimately embarrass and shame him. Now, it's not really in the book, but I have a very strong feeling that if Darrow had been honest with Cassius early in their friendship about what happened to Julian, their relationship might have been able to be salvaged in this book. Like, when they finally come to blows about it, Cassius is clearly hurt that Darrow was lying to him and seemingly thought Cassius was stupid. And I think it plays into how harshly he judges Darrow, despite the fact that he knows that Darrow didn't really have a choice. I also think it was a mistake of the Proctors, since they were trying to cheat anyway, to not match Cassius with Julian in the passage, but that might just be the villain in me talking, because, you know, you're either going to have the stronger brother kill the weaker brother and then be racked with guilt for the rest of the time of the Institute to weaken him, or you're going to have the weaker brother kill the stronger brother because the stronger brother will let him win, and then Julian was not going to make it in the Institute. He was not meant for that. He was too soft of a boy. We don't really know what went down in House Mars while Cassius was in charge after he tried to kill Darrow. Just that he was not a very good leader. We see him doing skirmishes with another house, mostly using slaves, but he's not being very smart about it. They're like him and the other house are kind of at a stalemate. It's pretty obvious that he isn't really good at war strategy, something he needed Darrow, Severo, and Roque for. But by the time Darrow returns, the castle is in shambles, everyone is filthy, covered in fleas, people are starving. His friends that are still there, namely Roque and Quinn, have left him emotionally. Like, Cassius has been... He has no, like allies or support. He's a shadow of the prince we met at the beginning of the Institute. And unfortunately, Cassius ends the book by declaring a blood feud between him and Darrow, forever ending their friendship. It's a sad note, and it adds a lot of bitterness to Darrow's victory, but I find it hard not to sympathize. Like Darrow, I wish things had played out better between them. And I wish things had played out better for Cassius himself, because he is ultimately a good guy, and everything he does is ultimately for his family. Titus. Now, before I speak about Titus, I do want to give another trigger warning. This section will mention sexual assaults. Here's the time code if you want to skip. Titus, I will mention the main things with him later on. So if you want to skip this part, you're not going to miss anything vitally important. Just a heads up. Now, Titus is a nasty and cruel boy. His tribe consists of the more brutal members of the house and very much represent what we're told many times about House Mars. That it is a wildfire. It burns hot and it burns fast, but it burns out very quickly. They are cruel, so they chase away Severo, the only member of the house that can make fire, and don't do anything to encourage the other tribes to help them. They basically just demand service. At one point, Darrow even comes across them after they have, like, killed, I think it was a deer, and they're, like, cutting off strips of it and, like, eating it, like, raw and bloody. And then things get worse when the house starts capturing slaves from other houses who they proceed to maim, torture, and for the girls, a specific type of torture that they inflict upon the girls. Titus is brought down, and while awaiting his punishment, Darrow goes into the dungeon to speak with him. He's livid, and he mocks Darrow for making friends with the other kids. He calls his own tribe cannibals for being willing to hurt other gold so willingly. And when asked why he would assault the girls, why he would let his tribe do that, if he's calling them cannibals for it, he says because they did it first. They came and took her. The bloody damn Golds did it first. Bloody damn. And that's a very important word. That is a word that is only said by Reds. Titus is like Darrow. He was a Red that was turned into gold. But he's angry. He's consumed by his rage. When Darrow was at first playing the long game until sincerely seeing the other kids as people, Titus can only see the monsters that hurt him, hurt someone he loved. He's let himself become the monster he's supposed to be fighting, and he is a monster. Darrow knows what he is, but he can't say anything because he knows Titus will get both of them caught and killed. So even though it pains Darrow to do it, he lets Titus be killed by Cassius. And I don't give a shit, because Titus is a complete, utter monster and the worst. He cuts off people's fingers and ears. He beat people. He murdered people. And he raped women because he felt like they deserved it. I don't care what happened to him to make him this way. I have absolutely no sympathy. I feel empathy for his pain, but in no way do I feel bad that he gets cut down. He very much became the monster he was supposed to be fighting, and I don't pity him at all. Cool motive, still murder. Roke. Roke is a very early friend of to Darrow in the Institute, and is described by everyone, including himself, as a poet. He's the only one that tries to comfort Darrow after the passage, for example, and establishes a bond with him and Cassius pretty quickly due to his empathy and sense of humor, really. He's also very practical and is perhaps the quickest at understanding what the point of the game is, with only Severo possibly getting it quicker. There's some implications that Severo knew what the point of the Institute was before they even got there. It's he who cautions Darrow on how to handle punishing Titus. Despite caring very deeply for Cassius, he warns Darrow to not let justice be replaced by vengeance. and to not let Cassius regain the standing he had in the house previously. We learn from him that his mother is a member of what is known as the Board of Quality Control, which is likely what gives him a lot of his insight into how the game is supposed to go. Accelerated Darwinism is what he refers to it as, a way to weed out the weak of their color, which is why some kids are allowed to die. It's pretty clear he doesn't really agree with this stance, but he understands it, and he knows what the point of the game is. Roke, unfortunately, doesn't get a lot to do in the first book, as he spends most of the time at the Institute presumed dead by Darrow and therefore the audience. We learn that he did survive and made his way back to House Mars, where he apparently kept the house together despite Cassius being a terrible leader, and despite what Antonia also does. He also apparently kept the love for Darrow, as we're told by Quinn, alive by insisting to everyone that Darrow would return to them. He is a major part of the lore, essentially, for Darrow and how the legend of the Reaper grew. Antonia. Antonia is a very cunning manipulator who, out the gate, is pretty upfront about what she is. Everyone knows they can't trust her, but she's very strategic and clever. She's very good at making herself useful and important enough to be kept close, waiting for her chance to strike. She even tells Darrow, while allied with him, that once he starts to fall, she'll be ready to stab him in the back. Which, of course, she does with the Roke trap, killing Leo when it falls. We don't really know, like with Roke, what really happened with her for most of the book because she's off screen. We do know that she betrays Cassius at one point because she's Antonia, and that's what she does. We don't know how she does so, but we do know that it's a very big blow, and in retaliation, she is crucified on there. She survives. She's still alive at the end of the book and everything like that, but yeah. That's about it for her for this book, but she does continue to go on to be an important character in the rest of the series, so I did want to go over her a little bit. Fitchner. Alright. Fitchner is the proctor of House Mars. He's a rude and nasty sort of man, ugly for a gold, something that he seems pretty insecure about. He chews on metabolizers and takes small efforts to look better, but also refuses to take the easy way of going to a carver. When he talks to Darrow, he even says that he's smarter than most golds, smarter than most of the intelligent colors like greens and blues. But he's limited by his looks and from not being from a good family. And that's kind of a reoccurring theme with him, warning Darrow not to reach beyond his limits, because, as Fitchner says, everybody has a limit, and if you push beyond it, you're going to be struck down. He has a particularly confrontational relationship with Severo. He's the one that sticks Severo with the nickname Goblin. He repeatedly makes fun of the kid, and even straight up tells him at one point that he does not like him. Of course, Severo gives it back in full force. You can't insult Severo without getting it back. So it only makes sense when it gets revealed that Fitchner is Severo's dad, which is also likely how Severo knew about the passage, and it was the only one mostly prepared to survive. They make it pretty clear that, Fitchner did not tell Severo everything, but it's also very clear that he's taken steps to give his son a better shot at survival. Fitchner is really hard to put into words from the first book alone, He does seem to care about Darrow, but he's also an asshole. Uh, it's easy to put a lot of his friction down to being worried about Severo. He knows his son. He can see how much Severo loves and trusts Darrow, and he knows what Severo's loyalty means. Like, he knows what that kind of devotion can lead to. Not just in the game, but in society. He even says at one point that Severo is better than most students at the Institute, which is true because he's best boy. But he can only go so far in the world, even if Darrow makes him think that's not true. Fitchner is also the only proctor that does not try to screw Darrow over, despite the bribes and threats from the Arch-Governor. He warns him multiple times to not screw with things, but also gives him help on occasion, such as medicine when Mustang falls ill while taking care of Darrow, or giving Darrow a knife ring that he originally had, which is very clutch in the fight against the Proctors. And ultimately, in the end, Fitchner is happy to see Darrow win, saying his joy comes mostly from the fact that his son survived. He does throw a final jab at Darrow with his reveal about Mustang, but ultimately the two of them in the book amicable to each other. Darrow even leaves Fitchner free at the end of the book to benefit from being the proctor of the winning house, and to get the rewards that comes from being the head of the winning house. Like others, he goes on to be very important in the next couple books. Tactus. Tactus is... Okay, so for me, he's right up there with Titus. He views everything as his right and challenges anyone that dares to tell him any different. He even sabotages his own house leader at one point by cutting her saddle straps of her horse, which results in her death. And then there's his assault on Nyla, which is... yeah. He's stopped before he can be another Titus, but they make it clear that it wasn't about the act, it was a power move to Darrow, which is stupid and disgusting, and I hate it so much. Yeah. I do like the lesson Darrow learns from it, though. He can't punish Tactus without angering those that were allied with Tactus when they joined his army, and Tactus can't go without punishment without angering Nyla's allies. Plus, Tactus is an asshole who really deserves to be punished. So Darrow's solution is actually pretty brilliant, and I really like it. Darrow whips him 20 times, and then orders Tactus to whip him in return 25 times. Any evil done by Darrow's army is an evil done in his name. So any punishment his army, like anyone in his army receives, Darrow himself will take, because they are extensions of him. And this, like, blows Tactus's mind. And a lot of the other golds, too. But mostly, like, we focus on Tactus and how it affects him. Faced with a gold that's willing to suffer for someone else, that would bleed for someone else, throws everything Tactus knows to be true off. Like, he's lost and confused, and in that state becomes unflinchingly loyal to Darrow. Like, he becomes ride or die. I don't like Tactus. I kind of wish he would have died after all of this happened. He does survive to the end of the book. I don't like him. There is one thing with Tactus that I do really, really like, and it cracked me up while I was reading it, and I had to include it in my notes and everything. And that's at one point during their attack on House Minerva. Tactus and Severo get sewn into the belly of a dead horse together, uh, and cut their way out for a surprise attack on House Minerva. And the whole time I was reading it, and the whole time, like, I wrote my notes, and when I told my roommate about it, all I could think about was that scene from season 2 of Hannibal, where, like, the dude climbs out of the horse and Hannibal just, like, gives him a look. That's all I could think of. Like, here. Mustang. Mustang, as I mentioned before, was the leader of House Minerva, and also a very skilled equestrian. She is actually introduced before the Institute as having come across Darrow while he was being trained on how to ride a horse in preparation for being in high society, and like she even made fun of him because like he was doing super bad riding a pony. But yeah, that's how she's first introduced. She very quickly like establishes herself as very, very smart when she's in the Institute. Like she reveals that she became house leader because she found out the way house leader, or primus as it's referred to, works is you have to earn 5 bars of merit by doing good actions, and then you like rise up and stuff like that. She found out, or like discovered that getting your standard back after it has been captured by another house counts as a point of merit. So she kind of arranged for her standard to be stolen a couple of times, and to get it back so she could get herself up to Primus. But she's also incredibly charismatic and likable, so like, despite the fact that she's kind of manipulating the system a little bit, because of the way she is, nobody really gets mad at her for it or like argues with her. They accept her leadership because she's just really cool. And like her actual name is Victoria, but like throughout the entire book we call her Mustang. And she, when she finds out what Titus does, she tries to demand Titus be handed over to House Minerva to be punished, which Darrow doesn't because, you know, punishment has to be handled within House Mars. It's part of the test. And she's like really, really dislikes Darrow because she thinks he's excusing or pardoning such behavior. But it's when he sees her after she's running from the attack on House Minerva and purposely like lets her escape. Like they make eye contact and stuff while she's like hiding in the mud, and he tells the others that are with him that he can't find her, that she's gotten away, and by doing so, like guarantees that she gets to stay in there and she's not enslaved. And that's when she starts like, maybe he's not that big of an asshole. And it's ultimately why she ends up saving him when she comes across him after he's been stabbed by Cassius. And, like, she takes him, and, like, they stay in a cave. She nurses him back to health. And, like, they discuss some, like, points of the plan. And, like, he even tells her about, like, the jackal and that there's cheating going on. And something that she's, like, not really surprised about. And, like, they even use, like, the phrase, like, cheat or be cheated. She even falls sick at one point, and Darrow has to like nurse her back to health, and that's where he gets the medicine from Fitchner. And throughout all this, and a little bit before, like early on, there's been a few instances where she will hum the song that EO sang before she died, and we find out that like the video footage of EO singing that song has been leaked, like essentially taken by the Sons of Ares, and is becoming like propaganda. And EO even gets known as like Persephone, as she's been turned into a martyr and mythologized. Like Darrow even sings the song to her, and they become really close, and we start getting like some romantic tension between them. She becomes like his primary lieutenant, and they work together. They fight. They build up the army, and she's very willing to like hand it over to Darrow because Darrow is the person that they need to follow. Like, she's good, but he's a symbol. They need something more than just a good leader. They need a legend, which the Reaper is, and she's smart enough to admit that. Even though she can, like, technically steal from him at any point since it's her standard that they're using, but she doesn't. And at one point, she even gets captured by the Proctors as an attempt to, like, screw over Darrow. And while she's captured, she, like, demolishes the room they put her in and does all that sort of stuff. She's really cool. And we also start seeing some, like, hints towards, like, the empathy to or their colors that Mustang has, and I know comes into play a lot in the later books, because she feels sorry for Io, who she knows is Persephone, and she doesn't agree with the fact that she was killed for singing a song, and has, like, argued with her dad about it, which, speaking of her dad, fun fact about Mustang that we learn near the end of the book, the thing that Fitchner reveals to Darrow is that, so Mustang, or her real name is Victoria Augustus. She's the Archgovernor's daughter and the Jackal's twin sister. And Darrow finds out this right after he has given Mustang half of his army to go and capture the Jackal, her brother. And Darrow, like, gathers the rest of his army, and he's prepared for her to betray him, and, like, he's mad at himself for, like, having feelings for her, and for, like, being so stupid and blinded by, like, expected loyalty and stuff like that. And then ultimately she shows up and she throws her naked and bound brother at Darrow's feet. She's like, I have delivered to you the Jackal. And she has nothing against Darrow for holding it against her, for not trusting her, because she never told him who he was, even when there was a point where she came face to face with the Jackal while Darrow had him captured. And she said there was a part where she was like, she wanted to talk to him, but Darrow kind of, like, brushed her off. I was like, we'll talk later. And that may have been when she was going to tell him. We don't really know. She doesn't really say. But I think she probably would have. Or, like, if the plan hadn't worked, that Darrow's plan with capturing the Jackal hadn't worked, she probably would have told him at that point. But things kind of got away, and she was captured before she could really tell him. And then still should have told him before she, like, took half the army, but it worked out. And Darrow's awesome, or Mustang's awesome, and Darrow really likes her, so. Mustang doesn't have very much of an arc in this book, because she's pretty clearly the same person at the beginning as she is at the end. Smart, charismatic, and empathetic. So we don't really get to see much of a change from her, other than the fact of her realizing that Darrow's not a monster and, like, coming to bond with him and becoming love interest. But she's still a very vital, important character. She just doesn't really have much of a journey in this first book. Pax. Pax is a prime himbo. He's very big, he's simple, he's not stupid, and he's just so damn lovable. He screams his name when he runs into battle, he gives big bear hugs to his friends, and apparently has a high-pitched, very girly laugh, which I find super charming. Every scene of him, especially once he joins Darrow's army, is fantastic. It's great. I get a lot of, like, Jason Momoa style vibes of just, like, that, like, big, beefy dude who could be very intimidating, but when he smiles, it just, like, makes your heart melt. Like Severo, he is incredibly loyal. Once you've proven yourself to him, he will do everything in his power to you. And he does. Despite having taken a blade to the throat from the jackal, he does not hesitate to throw himself over Darrow to protect him when the jackal is given a chance to kill him thanks to the proctors. He dies thanks to his wounds, but he does so with a smile on his face because he saved his friend. And I'm not going to lie, rereading this book, I knew what was going to happen, and I had to put the book down when I got to the scene before his death. I put the book down for like a day because it really, really hurt. And I don't really have very much more to say about Pax on there, but I did want to mention him as Antonio, just because, like, even though he does die in this book, his legacy, it still has an important impact on the rest of the series, and comes into play very much in the next few books. So I wanted to, A, let you guys know that he's the best and I love him, and let you guys know who he is for later books. For those of you that might just be watching the reviews and not reading the books, but you should read the books because they're good. The Jackal. So, for most of the time at the Institute, the Jackal is more of a abstract presence than an actual antagonist. There's mentions of something happening in the South, but it's a while before we learn exactly what happened. And when we do learn what happened, woof. The Jackal is a lot like Tactus, in that he takes it as a given that he'll come out on top. But where Tactus is more of a might makes right, I think he even says that at one point, and all, like, arrogance and fire, the Jackal is, like, cold practicality. If he's able to get help from the proctors because of his dad to win, why shouldn't he? It's just what expected. He should have that if it's available to him. It's only natural to take every advantage one is given to ensure their survival and their victory. Like, say, if someone was trapped in a cave with a bunch of their housemates with nothing to eat, of course they'd eventually eat the weaker members of their house that were there. That's just the natural thing to do. Did I forget to mention the cannibalism? Because, yeah, that's how he gets the nickname the Jackal. I'm going to actually read a quote from the book about this because, like, it stuck with me. After months in darkness, you eat whatever your mouth finds, even if it's still moving. It isn't very impressive, really. Less human than I would have liked, very much like animals, and anyone would have done it, but dredging up my foul memories is no way to negotiate. That's how he views the fact that he has literally eaten people. It's just like, meh. It's of course what's natural to happen. Anybody would have done it. Yeah. We do get to see a glimmer of what is truly at the Jackal's core. When we first meet him, he's actually pretending to be a boy named Lucien, and a member of I think House Apollo. I don't really remember it. I didn't write it down my notes, so I'm going to look it up again. But he's pretending to be a member of a different house named Lucien to kind of, like, lure Darrow into, like, a false sense of security and into a trap. And while disguised, he does actually kind of bond with Darrow a little bit. He talks about the stress of having an overbearing father, and I think that plays a lot into how he came to be the way he is. It becomes pretty clear, both through the way the Jackal talks, and Mustang talks, and eventually Archgovernor Augustus talks, that the Jackal was his father's least favorite. Like, despite the fact that, like, everything that the Archgovernor does to make uh, it so, like, the Jackal can win and give him a leg up, and the fact that he cheats for him, it's very clear that he's doing so because he doesn't think the Jackal can win on his own. Um, he doesn't have a lot of faith in him. Through what we learn, his the Archgovernor's favorite was his oldest son, uh, and yeah, his oldest son has died at this point, killed by Cassius's older brother. And we get some passing comments from Mustang that, like, her father was at least somewhat of a loving dad to her before her older brother died, and that, like, losing her older brother changed him a lot. And there also seems to be some implications that, like, the reason that he backed the Jackal and not Mustang is because Mustang would not accept cheating like that, and again, he clearly didn't think the Jackal was strong enough to win on his own. And, like, that even comes into play, like, the Archgovernor straight up says in front of his own son that the Jackal is weak, where Darrow is strong, which is why he wants Darrow to join his family, to strengthen where it's weak because of the Jackal. So, you know, like, that's a great thing to give somebody that's, like, kind of a sociopath, is an inferiority complex. Because, yeah, that really comes into play. And we'll see a lot more of that in the next few books, because the Jackal's still around. Also, his real name is Adrian. I'm going to keep calling him the Jackal probably throughout all of my reviews, because that's what he is. He ate a bunch of kids in a cave, and his lieutenants put bones and human teeth in their hair. So that, yeah, he's real screwed up. But he's very interesting as an antagonist, and I really like him a lot more. Like, and it's probably just because, like, we get to see more of him, like, face to face with Darrow than we get to see with, like, the Archgovernor. So I think the Jackal is actually a better villain, better antagonist to him, and yeah, that's about all I have to say about the Jackal right now. I'm going to start with, like, some of my smaller complaints about the books, and then I'll get into, like, one of my major ones. So is there are some times where, because the book is told from a first-person point of view, it's all told from Darrow's point of view, so we are locked in Darrow's mind. There are some instances where it kind of feels like we're being lied to by Darrow, which doesn't really make sense to the narrative. It's not super bad. The main one point being when he captures the Jackal, and while he's talking to him as pretending he's Lucian, Darrow continuously refers to him in his narration as Lucian, and while there's, like, small hints and stuff like that, like the fact that Lucian's hand doesn't fit, like, his ring doesn't fit his hand, on there, like, it's too big, but Darrow puts it off to, like, the fact that he hasn't eaten in a while, like, that he's, like, so hungry that his, like, ring's too big on his hand, and that, like, the trap that Darrow set up is pretty well communicated to the audience, by, like, various clues from things that we've learned previous, but, like, him continuously referring to him as Lucian, and, like, giving some excuses to, like, some of his behaviors, only then to, like, reveal that he knew that he was pretending to be somebody the whole time and was just taking a gamble that he was the Jackal, is really, I don't know. I don't necessarily like how it goes. It's not, like, a huge deal breaker, but it is kind of annoying. As well as there are certain sequences in the book where the author is clearly just trying to like sum up an interaction, which I don't really mind that too much because like it's not taking up a bunch of page. But then it'll like cut in the middle of this thing to do like just a single line of dialogue, and then go back to like summary and stuff like that. So it kind of breaks up the flow weird. It feels very much that like they the author had like a good quote that he wanted to use, but he couldn't figure out how to naturally fit that into a conversation. So he just kind of like hand waved or like just did some blanket stuff and then put that sentence in there because he thought it was good, which, and there usually are good lines, but like I said, it kind of breaks up the flow, and I'm not a huge fan of that. My biggest issue with the book, and it goes again to what I mentioned before with the trigger warnings, is going to be how it handles sexual violence. Cut to this, skip to this time code. If you want to skip to my final thoughts as I go over this, if hearing about that is triggering to you, I recommend skipping. Yeah, because one of my biggest issues with the books is how it handles sexual violence. When I was first writing the script before I started rereading the book, I knew I was going to need to put a trigger warning about it because I remembered it being in there, but I thought it had only been mentioned briefly. I don't know, I guess I just didn't fully remember how really prevalent it is for a lot of the book. Yeah. And there's this concept in a lot of media that rape is a thing that happens to women. We see it in a lot of media, a lot of modern media especially. It's a way to show that someone is a special kind of evil, that things are dark, that things are serious, and all it really does is trivialize what is, in reality, a very traumatic and depressively common thing that many people of all genders have experienced or are experiencing still. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have sexual assault in media. I actually think it's important to show victims of such a thing as long as it's handled correctly. The key to it, in my opinion, is that it needs to be the victim's story. For example, one of my favorite comic book characters is Kate Bishop, also known as the second Hawkeye. My figures of her are back there. She is a survivor of sexual assault, something that is told to the audience by Kate herself, and it's part of her motivation as a hero. She was harmed and wants to protect other people from suffering the way she did. And her trauma also comes up in other comics, showing the lasting effects it has on her while also not solely defining her. It is an aspect of who she is, but it is not her sole defining feature. I really like it, and I think it's a very good representation of a victim reclaiming her autonomy and moving on from it. I really like how it's handled in comics. Most comics. I know some comics will ignore that aspect of her past or not handle it right, but most good writers use it really well. In Red Rising, in contrast, all the sexual assault is done exclusively to women, and bearing a small scene, we only learn of it from men. The majority of the victims are nameless, faceless. Darrow describes screams of terror. Titus rants about how they came for her. Tactus is made a lieutenant despite what he attempted. Really the only named victim who's given any amount of, focus is Nyla. And she's made a lieutenant herself, and becomes an important member of the Reaper, of Darrow's army. but she's the only instance where we actually get to see, like, the victim's, like, point of view after the fact. Uh, like, it's not really addressed from anybody else. It's almost exclusively told from a male point of view, and a lot of it is how it has affected the men. Uh, like Tactus, or like, not Tactus, Titus being so angry, and assaulting women in turn because of somebody he liked was assaulted. I hate that. Tactus using it as a power move against Nyla and then going on to stand as a lieutenant. I hate that. Darrow mentioning how much the screams of the women affect him and haunt him and stuff like that. I was like, but he's not the victim. The women are. And yeah, just it's something I really don't like this in this book. It's not a deal breaker for me ultimately because while it is in a lot of the book, it's not the central focus, and it's pretty easy for me in particular to kind of like look past it while I'm reading it, to enjoy the actual story and the characters that I like. But I do understand where it may not be something that other people can stand, because everybody has different layers what they can forgive and excuse in their media. But yeah, and that's also where one of the comparisons to Game of Thrones for me comes through is how it handles sexual violence. But this isn't about Game of Thrones. Despite its flaws, I do really love this book. Both times I've read it, I've burned through it very fast because it is a joy to read. I think Pierce Brown did a really, really good job building a world that I can get lost in, and characters I can fall in love with. And I did. I did fall in love with. I mean, you've heard me gush and gush about a lot of the characters. The exposition, while mostly obvious, because it's setting up this new sci-fi world with new rules and stuff like that, I think was really well done. I found a lot of it very fun and non-distracting. Like, I knew I was being exposited to, but I didn't really mind it because the information I was being given was really interesting and cool, and the characters that it was shaped around were very interesting. So, yeah, I really like that. Also, like, I have no other place to really put this in the review. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but I really like the way that Pierce Brown names things in this. Like, Grav Boots, Pulse Fist, Ghost Cloak, Hollow Can. I don't know why, but I just find it very, very charming. Along with the slang that makes the way people talk feel very natural. I mentioned in the Titus section the word bloody damn being a low color, primarily a red term that they use versus how golds say gory damn is what they say on there. And like it's such a nice touch to show like the division between the caste system and something just as simple as the way that they talk. Because there's a lot of terms that carry through on there, but slang, as we know from like real life, is a very like specific type of thing, like very regional thing, kind of like soda versus pop versus Coke, fireflies versus lightning bugs, stuff like that. Different areas are going to have different terms to say the same thing, and the fact that he put that attention to detail into this, I really appreciate, and I actually took that into my own writing. Whenever I'm building a new world and stuff like that, that they would have their own terms and slang on there to make the world feel more real, and it really helps with the immersion, in my opinion, and stuff like that. Rereading this book has been insanely fun. And part of that I know is because I was also working on the script for this, my first video. I was very excited, but I just really loved reading this book again. And even though I know what happens next in the series, I'm really, really excited to read the next books again. There was a lot of foreshadowing in this book for some of the later reveals in this series that I'll touch on when I get to said reveals in the later books, because I don't want to spoil that on there. But that was one of the fun things about rereading this, is like knowing some of that stuff that's going to happen and seeing those foreshadowing. So this book definitely does have a lot of rereadability. Rereadability, that's the word. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for right now. I hope you guys liked my first video. If you did, please feel free to do all the common YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, all of that. You know, you guys are on YouTube, you know how it works. And if there's something you feel I should have done differently, please let me know. If there's something you guys really liked about this, please let me know as well, because, you know, I'm still feeling my way through this and figuring out how I want to handle this going forward with future videos. I also apologize for the audio. I don't have my own microphone, so I know it's not the best quality, but I'm going to keep trying to make it as best as I can. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for those of you that sat through this whole video to the very end. My name is Mr. Donut. This is Books, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Oh, and happy Pride. And there's you. Roxy, get down.